After the presidential debate last week, which was mostly a shouting match and it could have gone better, let's put it that way. Last night we saw a really well-manicured, much more old-style political debate. You had two politicians on stage rather than a professional politician and Donald Trump, where anything can happen. You had two politicians on stage, and in that battle, Mike Pence just mopped the floor with Kamala Harris. The best moment of the debate was when Pence landed the punch that President Trump tried to land on Biden, that Chris Wallace was running interference for Biden, so he wouldn't force him to answer. It was the question of whether or not the Biden-Harris administration would pack the courts.
When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864...
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
No, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
I'm speaking. This was her only defense the whole debate. I mean, she went in unprepared. She went in with indefensible positions, and she went in against a seasoned pro. Now, there are pros and cons to being a really good politician. The thing about Donald Trump is, by the old model, he's not really a great politician, because he actually does answer questions and he actually does do things that are pretty wacky, and he's not all that manicured. There's a room for that, too, because I think people get tired of the more stale political format. However, when you got politician versus politician, you got to go in recognizing how to play this, and she absolutely did not. So the only thing she had recourse to was she would say, "I'm speaking," and she would kind of get more and more angry about this all night. "I'm speaking," and you say, "Yeah, well, but answer the question." It's fine if you're speaking. You can read a litany of whatever you like, but I asked you a specific question. She couldn't answer it. Why? Because she knows if she says she won't pack the court, she's going to lose her base. She knows if she says she will pack the court, she's going to seem like a radical. There's nowhere for her to go. And very likely they would pack the court. So he hits her on the court packing. That was the best one of the night. The second best one was on energy. Biden and Harris have been very clear. They would ban fracking. But now, because that's pretty radical, because that would really raise energy prices, because that would take away a lot of jobs, now they're trying to pretend that they don't want to ban fracking. And they tell you with a straight face they're not going to ban fracking. They tell you with a straight face they're not going to try to get rid of fossil fuels. Mike Pence knows how to twist the knife.
We literally have spared no expense to help the American people and the American worker through this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland.
Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that.
Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels.
I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact.
That is a fact. That is a fact. The problem is that Kamala Harris said multiple times during these debates explicitly that she's going to ban fracking.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah, and starting with what we can do on day one around public lands, right?
Whoopsie daisy. And you've heard, we've played on this show so many times, Joe Biden saying that he would ban fracking, no more fracking, try to get rid of fossil fuels. So she had no recourse. She couldn't say, listen, on on August 5th, I said definitively I wouldn't ban fracking. She can't do it. I mean, also, as Mike Pence says, she was one of the Senate co-sponsors of the Green New Deal. So what she chose to do was try to seem very smug, very condescending, kind of have this silly smirk on her face all night, shake her head, say no, say when Mike Pence uses a cliche, you're entitled to your own opinion but not to your own facts. She goes, good line. There were other people saying that on Twitter. And Mike Pence delivered it well, but that is an old line. They were saying that as though they'd never heard anybody utter it. That's a classic old politician line. I think it was very effective. But that's all she could get in, that snide comment. Yeah, good line. Yeah, no, And Mike Pence, on the other hand, just seemed so sincere. He just seemed so earnest all the time. I've never seen anybody seem more earnest. So you had this kind of performative smugness versus this performative earnestness. And I got to tell you, the latter played a lot better, at least from my vantage point. Then they moved on to foreign policy. Foreign policy, another area where Pence was just ready to land haymakers. He comes in and he brings up the big issue, which is China. He brings up the big issue, which is the people who destroyed the global economy because of the virus, the people who have eaten America's lunch on trade and manufacturing for 20 years, and crucially, the people who then Vice President Joe Biden cheered on as we gave them every advantage in the international trading scene.
How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden.
What? Come again? What accomplishment? She's asked an explicit question about China. Here, I'll tell you what, let's role play. I'm Kamala Harris. Let's say I'm running for vice president. You ask me, is China our enemy? Yes. No, I didn't get to the other answers. You don't have to. Yes, China's our enemy. China is our number one geopolitical adversary. It's not even close. But Kamala Harris can't say that because Joe Biden for decades said that a rising China is good for everybody. In explicitly those terms, and not so long ago. He said it is a good thing. It's good that China's in the World Trade Organization. It's good that China is being allowed to grow their economy, even at the expense of the American economy, even as they steal property from us, even as they take jobs from us. And so she's got no answer to it. So then she has recourse to what I think was a not very thinly veiled racism accusation. She goes, I don't know what it is about Trump. He's got this weird obsession with repealing everything Obama did. What do you mean it's a weird obsession? Obama is a radical left Democrat. Trump is a conservative Republican. Of course he wants to repeal all of his radical legislation and radical executive orders. The only reason it would be weird is the usual accusation that comes up all the time that Kamala Harris made recourse to last night, which is race. She played the race card. Whenever she didn't have an answer, she goes, my mother came here as an immigrant, and I'm very proud to be the first black woman to be the vice presidential nominee. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about that. We have had a black president. We have had a female presidential nominee from a major party. It doesn't matter now, right? You say, and I could be if Joe Biden is elected and then, he doesn't make it through his term, I could be the second black president. It's like, well, who cares? Everyone cares about the first one. Nobody cares about the second one. It's just so silly, and it was a way to evade the questions, and it was a way to evade Mike Pence's attack. He finally, by the way, right out the gate, the first question was a loaded question trying to go after the Trump administration on the coronavirus. This moderator, who was much better than Chris Wallace, but again, damning with faint praise, this moderator was clearly on the side of Biden and Harris. The difference was Mike Pence just didn't care. Right out the gates, this was actually the first question in the debate. They bring up COVID, and Kamala accuses Trump and Pence of killing all these sorts of people and all this terrible stuff. And then Mike Pence points out a question that the mainstream media would never ask Biden and Harris, which is, what's your plan? And he goes a little further. He points out that Biden plan sure looks a whole lot like that Trump plan.
We were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resource and support they needed. And we began, really before the month of February was out, to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe we'll have literally tens of millions of doses of a vaccine before the end of this year. The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way. I mean, quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about.
Oh, man, Iron Mike just absolutely wrecking Biden right there at the end. Joe Biden, of course, very famously, infamously had to drop out of the 1988 presidential race because he was plagiarizing his speeches. So he gets that in. Kamala Harris, she doesn't even know what to say. Then Mike takes it further. The vice president says, okay, all right, we've got all this. We all agree that our plan is great. Thanks, Biden and Harris. I'm glad you agree. So now we're about to get this vaccine. So, Senator Harris, you going to take it? You're so interested in public health. You're going to take that vaccine, right? Right?
If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Oh, it's so awkward. So Pence is kind of teeing this up, and then you get the question from the moderator, which is, okay, well, so are you going to take it? And she can't say yes. Now, we are told, oh my gosh, we are told that we Republicans are undermining public health, and because we won't wear these masks, these dirty masks that many epidemiologists have said. We read one just the other day from Columbia, have said people are not using correctly, right? The guy from Columbia who was speaking to NPR said that the masks fail in studies because people just aren't wearing them right. So that, I guess she's going to do that. Obviously, they're not wearing masks during the debate. But then when the vaccine comes out, listen to the experts' public health, she won't commit to taking it. And Mike Pence sees his opening and takes it.
The reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year. We have 5 companies in phase 3 clinical trials, and we're right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is it's just unacceptable.
Mike Pence, the silent killer. You just don't know when he's going to sneak up on you. The rest of the debate went like that. You get the picture. I hope you enjoyed that short segment from the Michael Knowles Show. Be sure to check out the full episode linked in the description or download the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.